Welcome into the Friday edition of CBS Sports HQ.
Presented doing that.
by Jeep. Yeah, it's a great day. It's Friday.
I'm getting used to it because we're doing this every Friday together.
Exactly.
I'm absolutely loving it.
We are presented by Jeep. There is only one. Jeremy St. Louis alongside Jordan Giorgio, walking you through the last day of the work week. And it's Saturday hype day because, oh boy, we have a game of the season this weekend in Tuscaloosa. Number 2 Georgia facing number 4 Bama.
It doesn't get better than that. And it's crazy that this is the first Georgia-Bama game that Bama is a home dog and Nick Saban will not be on that sideline. Perhaps the biggest game of the entire college football season, a game between two teams that have been college football playoff regulars over the past decade, and they've combined for 6 natties during that span. Woo. Head coach Kirby Smart for Georgia has led this team since 2016. He's used to seeing Nick Saban as his counterpart on that sideline. However, Coach Smart still feels like Nick Saban is a part of this game, saying recently, quote, "I feel like he's still in it. So I don't really see it as being a shadow. He's announcing he's still involved. The game is better with him in it. He's just not coaching anymore. And I don't get any more chances to beat him."
Wow.
He had to slide that in, you know?
Yep.
But for more on this game of the week, presented by Jeep, there's only one. Let's go ahead and welcome in Richard Johnson and Tom Fornelli. Guys, it is so great to see you. Tom, this is going to take some getting used to. You wonder what was going on in the world last time that Bama was a home dog and Nick Saban wasn't on that sideline. It's a new era in college football for sure, and Kirby Smart recently saying he doesn't get any more chances to beat him. And something tells me he's not actually upset about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kirby doesn't get any more chances to beat Saban. He should be happy Saban doesn't get any more chances to beat him as well, because Kirby didn't have a great record against Nick during their time together battling against one another, although the win he did get was pretty big for Georgia in the big picture. But this is a very interesting matchup because it is weird. Like, you do feel like Nick Saban is still around, so much so that when I first started kind of breaking down this matchup in my mind earlier in the week, I temporarily forgot Nick Saban wasn't the coach. It's like, oh yeah, Kalen DeBoer is there now. And it's one of the reasons for that is because even though things have changed, like, this is still a very good Alabama football team. It might not be a Nick Saban Alabama football team, but it has the same kind of quality to it and the same kind of intimidating factor, even if it looks a little different. So I think going into this matchup, like, Kalen DeBoer does not have the, accomplishments of Kirby Smart. He doesn't have the national titles and all that stuff, but he has won everywhere he's been. He has had very good teams. He reached the title game last year with Washington, which is an incredible accomplishment. So I do think coaching-wise, even if it's not Kirby versus Nick, Kirby versus Kalen, still going to be very interesting.
Georgia fans, it's okay. The bad man's not here anymore. He can't hurt you anymore. He's on college game day. So he will be there in spirit, I'm sure, and he will be on campus tomorrow, but he is not going to be on the other sideline with the headset. And I'm sure that makes plenty of Georgia fans sleep soundly tonight. Kalen DeBoer is a different coach than Nick Saban, obviously, in tone and tenor. This is a team in Alabama that I think on offense is going to take more risks, is going to try to generate more explosives, is not going to try to, manage the game, so to speak, like the classic Nick Saban Alabama teams did. But I do think Kirby Smart has an opportunity here, more than just in this game, has the real opportunity to truly escape from Nick Saban's shadow and say, this is my era of college football for as long as he's going to do it in Athens.
Yeah, not a knock at all on Kalen DeBoer, just to be clear, but it's just going to take us a minute, okay? Take us a minute to get used to this. All right, you guys, this game arguably the biggest of the season for various reasons, including this Heisman Trophy race. It's Carson Beck versus Jalen Milroe. Milroe slightly above Beck right now in the current Heisman Trophy odds, but Richard, just how much do you see things maybe swinging in terms of this Heisman Trophy race when a winner is declared on Saturday?
Well, Jalen Milroe does have the chance to have, the classic Heisman moment in this game. Big game, Saturday night stage, and he can have the chance to really put his mark on the Heisman race. And I think Alabama's offense also lends itself to that. Not just Jalen Milroe's dual threat skills, which are myriad and very, very impressive, as we saw last season multiple times, including specifically against LSU, for instance. But this Alabama team is particularly boom and bust. They are not very efficient from a down-to-down standpoint. They really rely and subsist on big plays. When you've got receivers like Ryan Williams, for instance, and when you've got guys who can do with their legs what Jalen Milroe can, well, the big plays come in spades, and they do. And so I think Jalen Milroe can put his stamp on the Heisman race, particularly with the style in which Alabama will win this game if they do win this game. Milroe's going to have to be pretty much the sun, moon, and stars for Alabama in this game, doing it all with his legs and his arm. And if you're a Heisman voter tuning into this game, he's going to pop off the screen and vault to the top of a lot of people's lists.
Yeah, I think if you look at how the Heisman race has kind of gone so far this season, it feels like we've had a different odds-on favorite after every single week. You know, it's like whoever had the biggest game last week suddenly becomes the favorite. Right now it's Cam Ward because he's the only guy who hasn't really had a bad game, even if he hasn't had a true spotlight performance outside of the opener against Florida. So when you look at the matchup of this weekend's game and the magnitude of it, there is a good argument to make that if Jalen Milroe plays well and they beat Georgia, he will, kind of have a more solid case than anybody else at this moment. You could say the same about Carson Beck if he bounces back from what was a pretty substandard game against Kentucky 2 weeks ago, in which I don't think he looked very good at all. In fact, I thought it was probably Carson's worst performance since he took over the starting job last season. So if he's able to bounce back, go on the road, and beat Alabama in this spot, I think he will vault himself back into consideration. So I do think that as far as the Heisman is concerned, it's a very long way to go, and we've typically seen over the years, a lot of times it's what happens in November or late October that kind of helps settle that award. But I do think it's important to get a head start if you want to win it. So I think as far as that part of this situation goes, this is a huge game for both quarterbacks.
Most definitely. Let's talk about how one of these guys, Tom, can really lead their team to a win this upcoming Saturday. What is the X factor or matchup you're watching for in this one?
Yeah, my X factor for this game is Georgia wide receiver Arian Smith. Richard mentioned it. If you look at Alabama's offense, it hasn't been great down to down, but they have explosive plays that have helped them put points on the board and move the ball down the field. Georgia, to this point, to me, in the receiver game, I mean, this is going to be a shock, but it seems like they miss Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers quite a bit. They haven't had the same kind of juice in their passing attack this season so far that we've seen the last few years. And I think Arian Smith, who had a very good game in the opener against Clemson, was very good against Tennessee Tech, although honestly, who cares? But he did not play well against Kentucky. He wasn't much of a factor. And I think if Georgia wants to compete in this game, because as Richard mentioned earlier, Kalen is different from Nick Saban in that he's not going to try to just manage the game and just kind of grind it out. He's going to look to take shots, and he's going to look to put a lot of points on the board and force Georgia to get into something of a shootout with them. So if Georgia is forced to get into that kind of game, they're going to need the receivers to step up. And Arian Smith is somebody who I think is better than he has performed so far this season. So I think if there's a chance for kind of a breakout game and for him to solidify himself as the #1 option in that offense, because Dominic Lovett is a good player, but to me, he's more of a safety release valve than he is a big play guy. So I think Arian Smith has a chance to be that. And if he can do that this week, I think Georgia's got a good chance to pull off this win.
Tom brings up one part of the Georgia passing game. I'm bringing up the other. Where are the tight ends for the Dogs? Look, Brock Bowers last year for Georgia was absolutely the metronome by which this offense went. He bailed them out against Auburn and darn near won them the game single-handedly. He had 71 targets overall. That was more than any other Georgia receiver, and he only played in 10 games. So we know what Brock Bowers gave them on offense last year to really pace that offense, keep the chains moving. But Georgia does not have that this year with anybody, particularly its tight ends, and they're kind of doing a tight end by committee situation. Oscar Delp, Austin Lucky, Ben Yurcek, who the transfer from Stanford, and nobody's really grabbed that role by the scruff of the neck, and nobody's really been able to be a really consistent and efficient mover in the passing game for Carson Beck. Carson Beck is not really this guy who's going to throw deep and beat you deep over the top, even though he does have some of that ability. He's more likely to beat you with sort of 8, 9, 10-yard passes in the intermediate parts of the field. And for that, you need a good tight end and a capable tight end. You don't have to have Brock Bowers, who's an all-world talent at that position, and obviously a first-round draft pick, but you do need something at that position. And right now, Georgia's not getting it. So how that tight end room can step up in this game and show themselves and give Georgia a little bit more of an efficient dimension to their passing game will be key for me on Saturday.
All right, you both kind of brought up paths to wins for both teams. With all that kind of being said, let's get a game pick. Richard, I'll come to you first. Right now, Bama, slight underdog at home. First time since 2007 they're a home dog. The points are set at 50.5. What is your play here? Are you leaning Georgia, going Bama?
I am taking Georgia. Like I said, the hoodoo is gone with Nick Saban on the other sideline. He's not there anymore. I am going to take the dogs. I think that I look at Alabama on offense, and I see them as a boom or bust outfit. And I think Georgia will be able to keep the top on, at least to an extent, of Alabama's offense enough to where you limit Alabama, you make them be efficient, you make them try to drive 8, 9, 10 plays down the field, and I'm not sure Alabama can do that to the extent of putting up, 28, 30, 35 points. So I'm taking the dogs in this game.
I'm going the other way. I'm taking Alabama at home as a dog. Like you said, Jordan, it's been since 2007 since I've had the chance to do so. So I'll happily take those points at home if I can get them. But to me, the primary concern is we've talked about the Georgia passing game. I think a big part of what's going to go into whether the Bulldogs can move the ball through the air is that offensive line, which has been very good on the interior all season, but they lost one of their best players in their right guard, Tate Ratledge, and now they've got a backup in there, and that also will impact the two tackles that they have, who, for my eyes, have not been great in pass protection. So going up against this Alabama defensive front, if Carson Beck has to drop back and kind of get into a shootout, I worry about that line's ability to hold up against this Alabama front. And I do think that while, again, they're not efficient, but I do think Alabama will be able to hit enough explosives against this Georgia defense to kind of give themselves the advantage. So I'm taking the Tide at home.
I want to know what Tom Fornelli was doing back in 2007. That's what I want to know.
That's a wee boy.
Yeah, wee boy. All right, we got a split here on HQ. Richard Johnson and Tom Fornelli joining us for their game picks. It's going to be a good one. Classic SEC showdown in Tuscaloosa. Kickoff slated for this one, 7:30 primetime. Kirby Smart, you see there, 1-5 at Alabama. That's when Nick Saban is coaching, of course. This time, it's a different story with Kalen DeVore on the sideline. We'll see what happens as Bama enters this one as a home dog for the first time since 2007.